Internet is said okay. Looks like we're getting to be alive. Yeah, there it goes. There it goes. All right. That looks like, you know me, I have to make absolute sure. Sometimes it's like, Ron, we know. And it's like, yeah, but I need to know because just in case, yes, we are alive. The internet has said yes. It is beautiful. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I did my time zone third. It's morning where I'm at. I still consider this show a morning show. I know a lot of people, they're like, Ron, it's 11 a.m. where you're at. Yeah, it's a morning show to me. I do a morning show. I've been doing a morning show for a while. I used to start this show an hour earlier. This show used to start at 10 a.m. my time. I don't know how I did that. I really don't. When I think about it now, I'm like, how did I do that for like a year? It starts later now, which best get your news on with Ron decision I've ever made. Best, yeah. You guys voted on it too, by the way. I let you guys vote. I was like, you guys get to vote, and you all voted for the time switch. And I was like, oh, thank goodness, because I really wanted to do it anyway. So I'm really glad you guys were on board too. Anyway, shout out to everyone who makes the show possible. ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules. You can get their tea wholesale now because of the pandemic. Please go show them some love because their tea's awesome. They supply the tea to Get Your News On with Ron. It's run by a lefty and friend of the show, Jeffrey. ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. The raspberry pecan is my personal favorite. Show them some love. Our friends over at triageoil.com. Thank you very much for the most recent care package, Triage Oil. They make topical pain oil that you rub on your joints. It's great for a burn. It's great for a cut. And it really does work wonders. I use it on my neck all the time after my bad car accident. Please do check that out. Triageoil.com, TRIAGE oil.com. And as far as CBD oil is concerned, I still got you covered. RareNaturalsCBD.com. Are you looking for a great CBD oil you can just kind of put in your drink? The taste is very, very subtle. You don't really taste it at all. And it relaxes you. It soothes you. It's great after a big workout. If you feel a headache coming on and you have some of it, it really does work wonders. That's what I use it for a lot. You can put it right under your tongue, or you can put it in a beverage of your choice, really. I like to put it in like a little seltzer water. It's great. RareNaturalsCBD.com. That's with an S, RareNaturalsCBD.com. Best part is you go there, you use the promo code Lucy at checkout, and you get 30% off your order. That's the promo code Lucy at checkout. Get 30% off your order. So if you're a CBD oil user, you use it regularly, this is a great way to get your CBD oil because you can get 30% off all of your orders. Use the promo code Lucy, Lucy, at checkout. All right, without further ado, I'm real excited to talk to this guy. We've been friends over the years, and we were able to reconnect recently. He's a very, very funny guy. He has a special out now that we're going to talk about some throughout the hour. Please welcome to the show the very funny John F. O'Donnell. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Ron? Thanks for having me on, man.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
How's everything going where you're at?
I'm good, man. What I say to people, as much as I want to complain, I say, I'm not food insecure and I have access to outdoor space. So I'm good.
Dude, I mean, right now it's like, how much time do you spend like in our contemporary moment? Like how much time do you spend thinking about the future?
Dude, I have like such a mental wellness regimen in place to keep myself from thinking about it so much. It's like I'm pulling out all the stops because I don't know what the future is going to hold. Like predictions I'm trying to make, I can't tell what's going to happen. So it is like, and taking away from comedians that ability, that socially acceptable ability to push out all that energy through stand-up sets. It's like, it's frustrating, but a lot of yoga, a lot of meditating, low inflammation diet, so I'm hanging in.
Do you, you mentioned stand up, which, yeah, dude, it's like a piece of all of our hearts is just, there's a freaking hole, dude. Like,
there's no sympathy for it. Nobody's like, oh, you don't get to get up in front of a group of strangers and make them laugh and get, endless gratitude and instant gratification for your work right now. Oh yeah, we feel so bad for you. It's like reopening stand-up is like phase Z. You know what I mean?
I know, man. I feel like other performers get it. Musicians get it. I mean, obviously other comics get it, but like, yeah, musicians, artists, poets, they get it. They understand. They're going through the same thing, or at least something similar. I mean, musicians, they arguably have it a little bit easier because they can do like outdoor stuff a little easier. So they're slowly getting back to normal a little bit quicker. But, you know,
And there are these outdoor stand-up shows and stuff like that, you know.
that's
But
true.
so when I escaped New York City back in March for Jersey, where my family lives, because I wanted to, ride this out with them and support them and vice versa. So that's what I've been doing. And, I'm strategically figuring out how to get back into New York. I'm just grateful that I have different comedy projects that I can work on, like, podcasts and newsletter and YouTube and stuff, because yeah, I'm just trying to immerse myself in work and just trying to contribute where I can,
Have you done any Zoom shows or anything like that? Have you been doing that stuff?
Early on, I did, but I realized I was like, who is this for? Is this for the audience, or is this like a methadone clinic experience for the comedians?
You don't think people enjoy it?
I think if it's produced well, yes, but some of the ones that I did, there wasn't much audience, and it just felt very kind of like sterile, unless comedians are getting really creative about it, But I mean, it's like the live element to stand-up is where all that fire is. And I think a lot of it, I appreciate the Zoom shows. I appreciate if they're helping comics. I appreciate if audiences are appreciating it. And I'm going to say appreciating a lot, Ron, but I appreciate.
Yeah, you're nailing it.
I appreciate that audience are supporting that sort of adapted version of the live element. But I think it's tough for a Zoom show to compete with, all this streaming garbage. But maybe I'm being too cynical about it. I don't know. What do you think?
Speaking of streaming garbage, we're going to get into the news here, buddy.
Oh, good.
No. I mean, I think, maybe I'm a little more, like, I don't want to say like pro Zoom shows, because obviously it's not the same thing, but my take is like, is it the same? Of course not. But is it a lot better than nothing at all? I'd say yeah. And I think there's a huge difference between an actual Zoom show when you do take the effort to put it on right, versus just a live stream or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. That's my take.
Did you just like lay out the Democratic Party's slogan? It's not, it's not good or anything, but it's not nothing.
It's not nothing.
The Democrats,
they're gonna take that and run with it.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, it's not nothing. It's not nothing.
Zoom shows of political parties.
The Zoom show is, the Zoom show is just the lesser evil to nothing. Yeah. Well, and you know what? That's fair. That is fair. Yeah. The Zoom show, it's like, what's worse than not doing stand-up at all? Like, well, pretty much not. That's as bad as it gets. When you're a stand-up and you're doing no stand-up, that's the ultimate worst. So what is slightly better than that? Doing stand-up on Zoom. What would be even more ideal than doing stand-up on Zoom? Doing stand-up to a bunch of people who don't speak English. And then what would be better than even that? Just doing stand-up in a regular setting,
Yes. But worse than all that would be the first night of the Democratic Party's convention.
We're going to get into it. We're going to get into that. First, we're going to go here. So Donald Trump announced, I believe it was yesterday, that he was going to be having a huge pardon. He's like, I'm going to be dropping a big pardon, and it's going to be a very well-known person. And I think he specified it wasn't going to be Edward Snowden, because there was that speculation. Did you see that when he was asked about Edward Snowden and he was like, well, I'm going to look at it. And people were kind of, oh, maybe he'll pardon Edward Snowden.
Well, I actually have not been tracking that story, but I do know who he pardoned, but I'm not going to, steal your thunder.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fine, dude. So here's who he pardoned. He pardoned Susan B. Anthony. And let's just watch what he has to say about it.
I will be signing a full and complete pardon for Susan B. Anthony. She was never pardoned. Did you know that? She was never pardoned.
Is it a little weird they all laughed?
Yeah, that is super weird.
Was that did that strike you as weird too?
It seemed like, nobody knew, and then like they had all their speculations, but that Susan B. Anthony was not on anybody's radar, so they were like, what?
Yeah, well, he didn't, at least, and I just kind of heard grumblings online. I didn't really see a direct quote or anything, so I was just kind of being like, okay, let's see. I didn't think it was going to be, I know when he said it wasn't going to be Snowden, there were some people who were like, oh, maybe it's going to be Julian Assange. I didn't think that. I was like, I don't think he's gonna. I mean, I wish he would. I wish anyone would.
Me too. But I mean, it's funny during the during the election, he's like, WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks.
Yeah, now he's not. Yeah.
No, not so much, I guess. Yeah.
But that's weird. All right, let's watch the rest of this. I don't know why. All right, so Trump's actually getting to do what we really want to do. Apparently Trump's doing stand up right now. This
amazing.
Is, it's amazing. Trump gets to do stand up right here. That's weird that they laughed. All right, anyway. All right, now they're clapping.
And you know that she got a pardon for a lot of other women, and she didn't put her name on the list. So she was never pardoned. And we're for voting. That's right, she was guilty for voting. And we are going to be signing a full and complete pardon. And I think that's really fantastic. So thank you all very much, and let us sign, and we'll do the other signing later on. It's being prepared right now, and I look forward to doing it.
All right, there you have it. So that's it's Susan B. Anthony. It's a posthumous pardon, and it's a symbolic act. That's what it is. That's just what it is.
I mean, I support it.
Right.
Also, it's just like, maybe women will hate me a little bit less now, What the fuck?
Oh yeah, it's a total. I mean, it is definitely a good move politically. I mean, here's an election's coming up. People are worried about the integrity of said election. Here, he's pardoning someone who was part of the women's suffrage movement, was anti-slavery, got in trouble for voting, like he said. So yeah, I mean, it definitely looks good, and yeah, I'm with you. Like, I'm for it. I mean, that's nice, but I also recognize, I don't think symbolic actions are bad things. I get it. You're sending the message of, hey, as a society, we've evolved and we got this wrong, and we're trying to do what we can to fix it. Obviously, she is not alive, but we're doing what we can, and all we can do is this symbolic action as a way of righting this wrong. And presidents have done this a bunch over the years. I get it. But, isn't it a little more substantial when you say, hey, instead of like, hey, we've done wrong and we've evolved, isn't it a little more substantial when a person's alive and you say, hey, we're doing wrong and we've evolved? I mean, isn't that just a little more like, well, this person's alive? And hey, there's plenty. How about all the activists and journalists at DAPL who are still facing charges? All female, by the way, pretty much 100% female, still facing charges. I know they dropped some of them. I know they dropped Amy Goodman's, but there's still some charges floating out there. Why didn't you pardon them? Why didn't you pardon Edward Snowden? Why didn't you pardon Julian Assange? I mean, there's a lot of other stuff you could have done as far as things we're doing wrong now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I don't want to be completely cynical about a symbolic gesture either, because I do think that is important. But all of those people that you just mentioned, there's all sorts of political fallout to that, like this
Sure.
one, like even as much as the corporate Democrat faction of the news media would love to somehow shit on this one, it's going to be tough. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Somehow, that's what's so fucked up, is somehow if he pardoned, water protectors, somehow MSNBC would figure out how to like spin that, you know what I mean? Like against him and shit like that.
They would probably do something like, they were violent or something like that. That would probably be their spin on it. They would attack him from the right because that would be the only way they could.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like the only time that they liked him as president was when he put through missiles into Syria, you know what I mean? And then you got Brian Williams being like, I recall a Leonard Cohen song when he mentioned the majesty of our weapons. What a fucking freak show. Anyway,
that was offensive on so many levels. That was just so. Did you see Jeremy Scahill go? I was about to say go nuclear, which is a weird metaphor to use given the context. But that was what came to my mind when Jeremy Scahill just like went off on that on CNN. Did you ever see that video?
I did not, but I remember Scahill calling out Chris Hayes about Obama's targeted drone strikes on Anwar al-Awlaki and his son and stuff like that, being American citizens. But
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you should track it down, man, because it is epic. He goes off on Brian Williams for that, and he goes off on the media for that, and you're just watching it and you're like, so this is his last CNN appearance, and he made it good. He did great with it.
Yeah, Scahill has brought it to him the times that they've had him on.
Yeah, and maybe they
cool.
have had him on since. I don't know. I can't say without a doubt that was his last CNN appearance, but with the way it went, So let's talk. You brought up the Dem convention. It's going on, and what have you seen so far?
Well, I watched most of it last night because I'm really into self-injurious behavior.
Clearly.
And it's interesting because I'm not like tracking day to day like electoral election stuff, just because it's just such a dumpster fire that it's like it really fucks with my psyche. But I was like, okay, I want to watch this. I want to see what's going on here. And it was like, it's like there's such a long overdue need for racial justice in this country, and to address police brutality and to address what I think is the biggest moral failing of our country, which is mass incarceration, which in my opinion is relatively marginalized in all of this talk for some reason. You know what I mean? But anyway, it's like I know that this corporate Democratic Party, that they don't really give a fuck about racial justice. They don't give a fuck about defunding the police, abolishing the police, any sort of real reforms, but they're virtue signaling the whole fucking thing. And for me, it kind of makes my blood boil how they're kind of like, co-opting racial justice. And you see it in terms of like the corporate co-opting of Black Lives Matter, which has been like grotesque to me. You have like every corporation just slapping Black Lives Matter on the end of it, underneath everything, wanting to increase diversity, but increase diversity within an incredibly unequal economic system. It's called neoliberal multiculturalism. It's basically, and Adolph Reed, this great political scientist, African-American political scientist, talks about it. He goes, it's basically like if 1% of the population has control of 90% of the resources, that's okay as long as that 1% is properly diverse. As long as 14% is African-American, as long as about 50% are women, or as long as 12% or the appropriate amount is LGBTQIA, etc. And I don't know, maybe this is part of the process that it has to happen, but to me, it seems like the ultra-capitalists have realized the only way to keep their system in place is if they could co-opt diversity and put enough people of color into these positions, or allow these glass ceilings to break that still maintain this infrastructure. So, that's what I thought of the Democratic convention last night.
So 10 out of 10, is that?
I thought Kasich nailed it. Besides that,
What was with that goofy looking football field thing he was standing on?
Crossroads, dude, fucking Fork of America.
Yeah, no, I get what they were trying to do, but it just looks so goofy. And he's just talking about just nothing. And well, so Fox News made this little summary. Kasich and AOC spar ahead of ex-GOP governor's DNC speech. So Kasich, who will be speaking out against President Trump, now he said that the party is moderate, and he described AOC as an extreme politician. And he goes, I listen to people all the time make these statements, and because AOC gets outsized publicity doesn't mean she represents the Democratic Party. She's just some member of it, and it's on both sides, whether it's Republicans or whether it's Democrats. Ocasio-Cortez fired back in a tweet accusing Kasich of fighting against women's rights. I wonder what caused her to get that conclusion.
Yeah,
I wonder where she got that from. I love how, and this is Fox News. So, I mean, of course, that's what you're going to get. But like, she accused him of, it's not like he wasn't trying to ban abortion in Ohio or anything like that.
Well, here's the thing, she's an extreme politician. So that's
very extreme. She took that extreme.
Also, I will say something. Let's as awful as it say, Kasich is not wrong in the respect that a lot of the Democratic Party does not agree with the progressive wing of it.
Absolutely. Well, it's very telling. I mean, he describes it as a moderate party, and of course, he's talking by United States standards, which I keep saying. I'm like, look, the Democrats are a right-wing party. They're not by anywhere else in the world, like any other democratic experiment in the world, they'd be considered a right-wing party, not a center-right party, a right-wing party, and the GOP would just be like a neo-fascist party. And those are our choices.
Yeah, but we don't realize that shit. Like our IQs, our political IQs, especially about foreign policy by design, are so low in this country. And right now in this election, there's like no bandwidth for foreign policy at all. They didn't mention foreign policy once in that entire fucking convention last night.
Well, I heard the only person. Now, I didn't watch the whole thing, so you watched a lot more of it than I did.
Yeah.
But I heard it wasn't until Bernie spoke that there was any policy talk at all. Is that accurate?
There was no talk about policy that I saw. I missed maybe the first 5 minutes of it, of the entire thing, but I saw Bernie's entire speech and everybody else's. There was no talk about It's the exact same thing I thought. There was no talk about policy at all until Bernie Sanders. It was all about emotion. It was all, and you know what? Maybe as fucked up as this is to say, maybe that's where we're at. Maybe the country's so fucked that we just need the other half of the country to feel okay for 4 years. You know what I mean? Like, I have a lot of friends that I want to have be in a better mood for the next 4 years, you know?
I think we both do. It's a very, very weird place to be. And it's so interesting. Like, here's the thing that I don't get as far as like this convention and as far as just like, people who are, talking about we got to get rid of Trump. Okay, if nothing's done about two things, there's no way in hell Trump loses. And nobody seems to be talking about this. If they don't do something about the Postal Service, one. And two, and this is the bigger one, John, that nobody is freaking talking about, except for shows like this, a YouTube show that a dude is streaming in his living room. If 40 million people lose their homes at the end of September, which we're on track to get there, 40 million people, there's no way in hell a Republican's going to lose an election in November if that happens. There's just no way. These people aren't going to be able to vote. They're not going to get their ballots. I mean, the bigger issue is 40 million people are losing their homes. That's infinitely more important. But it's mind-blowing that even in the convention, they're not talking about any of that stuff. They're not talking about it.
Not even close. Yeah, and it's hard for me to even internalize that. 40 million people losing their homes. It's like, I like to think that they're not going to just, like, the country can't just kick 40 million people onto the street. You know what I mean? Like,
what are they doing to stop it? I mean, that's what we're on.
I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that. I don't know. Vague executive orders from Trump. I don't know. But, you're right. But tracking back to the Postal Service thing, that is a story where absolutely what Trump is doing right now is super fucked up. It's just so unfortunate that it's like now the Democrats can politicize that and have no culpability for this long-standing, like, bipartisan effort to, bankrupt the Postal Service and privatize it. I mean,
yes,
that goes back to this 2006, law got passed. I think it was called like the Post Office Enhancement and whatever, something that sounds like Orwellian, to protect the post office. But really what it did was, and it was a bipartisan, it passed not almost unanimously in the House. All the Democrats voted for it, and only 20 Republicans in the House didn't. But basically, it said the post office needs to be able to fund their retirement, their health care for all of their employees, their retired employees, up to 75 years in the future. What the fuck? Something no other company does or could do. So it starts them off in the red, over $5 billion a year. So, and it also made it illegal for them to be like almost like an alternative to these big banks, a community banking option, which was a good option for a lot of people and actually was able to serve a lot of the underserved people who have to do these payday loan crazy shit where it's like they have to, it's very expensive to be poor just to get your money. And so this has been a problem that's been happening for a super long time. And in the Senate, they just did like a voice vote, so you can't even tell who voted for or against it. So they've been, because of lobbying of places like, privatized, letters or mail service stuff like UPS, FedEx, and now Amazon's infrastructure. There's all sorts, and digital stuff. There's all sorts of issues that have happened to the post office. And now, the Democrats just care because it could affect the election. That being said, it still is a problem,
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you bring that up because, like I mentioned that yesterday, where it's like, look, when you have this bipartisan attack on the postal service, and the the side that's supposed to be the side for workers doesn't say anything like, "Hey, guys, it's called the postal service, not the postal business. This is a government service, and if we're providing low cost shipping all around the world, and if we're taking care of our employees who are American citizens and they're getting salaries that they're spending in the economy, we're doing our freaking job." The fact that nobody went there, well, what do you expect to eventually happen?
Exactly. Also, it is one of the largest employers of African Americans in the country, too. So with all of their virtue signaling about giving a fuck about racial inequality, it's like they're completely full of shit. And something that I want to do, because now that I'm, now that I've been off redacted tonight for like a year, something that I'm incredibly proud that I got to do for 5 years, I want to just say, one of the other original correspondents on that show, Sam Sachs, he covered this story fucking 5 years ago, fucking 6 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like you're saying, it's like, you're a dude with a YouTube channel that's covering real fucking news. You know what I mean? We're a show that, yeah, it's funded by the fucking Russian government, which allows us to tell the truth about American shit. Are there blind spots about Russian foreign and domestic policy? Sure. Get that every place else. The propagandistic system in America is so layered and it's so entrenched, and it slips out beyond just the news industry into all sorts of things within the entertainment industry, which is a whole other mind fuck.
Oh, dude, we could talk about that all day. I mean, especially like with me being in LA, man. I'm in the thick of it, dude. And it's like I don't know what's gonna happen, John. I really don't.
What the fuck? Does anybody talk about this? Like, what about all of our friends in the entertainment industry? It's like you look at some of these, you look at the movie American Sniper. It's like that is a straight up psyop. That movie is a psychological operation.
I still have not seen it. I still have not seen it.
Dude, you have to both not see it and see it. You know what I mean?
Well, that's
like,
what I wanted to see it for the whole standpoint of, this is kind of a modern day, from what I've heard. And I haven't seen it, so I can't say this definitively. But from what I've heard, like, this is a modern day true propaganda film. So it's like, I mean, you can learn a lot from it from a propaganda standpoint, because I remember when it came out in the news where schools were trying to not screen it. I actually was saying, you know what? I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't be definitive here. But if it is the type of movie they're describing, I think they should screen it because this is a teachable opportunity.
Wait, first of all, it depends which way they're going to fucking teach it. You know what I mean? But
well, that's fair. That's fair. But they were saying they wanted to straight up ban it. And they were saying the reason was it was a propaganda film. I mean, again, this was a news story when the movie came out.
Wait,
and I said just like various university people, man. I mean, this is, wow. It's not fresh in my head. It's just like, but I was like, if it is a propaganda film, you should be screening it and teaching it. You should have, communication professors and people who specialize in propaganda, those types of scholars, screening this movie and saying, okay, so this is what it's doing. This is what it is. Even if you agree with the message, this is still a propaganda film. And again, I haven't seen the film, but I was just saying, if it is in fact that, they should be screening it to teach it, not screening it.
I agree with that 100%. I just didn't even hear that universities were kind of calling it out as being a propaganda film. I didn't know that.
I mean, I don't remember how extensive it was or what university. I mean, again, it's a foggy story in my head, but yeah, there was some of that.
No, it's fine. But let me just tell you, I went and saw it. It is a masterpiece of propaganda, to the point where when I left the theater, everybody else in the theater walks out in complete reverent silence, complete reverence in silence. And I remember I was like walking in front of this couple. I was like, wow, I guess I guess everybody's quiet. I guess you got to just like let the the brainwashing kind of like sit in for a little while. And they just like looked at me like I was an asshole. You know what
And then you gave him a card.
I mean? Yeah, then I gave him
Be like, check me out. I'm on the TV.
check me out. Check me out. I'm on Redacted Tonight. We can't. But actually, this is what they did. That's so nefarious. They crunched the timeline in the most manipulative way possible, where basically at one point you see the Chris Kyle character played by Bradley Cooper. He's at home with his wife. He's got his shirt off, arm around her. He's watching TV. He sees the planes flying to the tower on September 11th. Then it cuts to him in Iraq in 2003, where he's fighting. His commander says AQI, which is Al Qaeda in Iraq, which did not come into play until late 2004 when the regime was the Saddam regime was removed and there was that power vacuum that allowed the terrorists to come in. So all of those things, what that does, as for like the first touchstone of Americans for history about this war, it totally immediately conflates Iraq with 9/11. Saddam Hussein with 9/11, which they have nothing to do with each other, which still apparently a considerably larger amount of the country than you'd feel comfortable with. Something like 40 or 50% actually still believe that is the fucking case.
Doesn't that blow your mind? It's like, did you just unplug in like 2002 and just never? Where do you go? Like where? Like mentally, where do you go? Like,
dude, I want to like I want to like be mad at the people for that, and I am. But also, it's like there's such a concerted, this combination. There's a concerted effort to keep folks not knowing this shit, and then there's an internalized willful ignorance amongst other people. But beyond that, in this movie, also, it's like you watch this movie and they make it such a clear like good versus evil, like white hat versus black hat sort of thing, where it's like everybody leaves that movie feeling like we had the moral high ground somehow to invade that country illegally and have the blood of so many dead Iraqis on our hands. It's nuts. And then because at the end when he was, and then they use the thing where it's like they show the difficulty that soldiers deal with, and he dealt with PTSD and things like that, which is of course legitimate. But when you connect that and pull at people's heartstrings in order to codify a fucking bloodbath, what that does is it allows for it to happen again and again and again and again. It allows for the next generation of our heroes to go, our warriors to go fight and die, for special interests, for resources and shit like that. It codifies it. And basically all of this in the broader scheme of things, it's called liberal interventionism. It's the rebranding of neoconservatism, where it's like the whole Bush cabal of going to war. You can't get enough of the American population on board for that, or to sanction other countries because with that mentality. But if you do liberal interventionism, where you explain to people, the mainstream liberal class, like, hey, in some of these countries, they're not treating gay people good enough, so we better bomb them to the fucking Stone Age, because
we're perfect in that regard.
We're perfect.
We treat gay people great. We nail it over here.
Yeah. How about this one? I mean, I'm sorry, but like as I look at reporters that I know and trust and are in it for the right reasons, like friends of mine that work at the Gray Zone Project, like Max Blumenthal and Ben Norton, Anya Parampel and Aaron Mate, etc.
They are doing the Lord's work, man. They are doing amazing work.
Fuck yeah, they are. Yeah. Fuck yeah, they are. But it's like you look at their critical analysis, coverage of what's going on in China, and then you hear like a Western corporate media take on what's going on with the Muslim community over there. You're like, oh, there's a disconnect here. It's like, oh, yeah, things are far from perfect in China, but they're painting this like China is the fucking Nazi Germany? Like, are you fucking kidding me? How dangerous it is to do that and convince Americans that that's the case?
Well,
maybe I'm wrong.
Well, no, what folks at the Gray Zone do, John, that they do the very kind of controversial thing of actually going to a place they want to report on.
Oh, yeah.
They go there and report back on what they see, and it's a very radical act.
Dude, that's anti-American, straight up, dude.
Straight up. I mean, why are you going somewhere else? You got everything you need right here. Why do you got to go somewhere else? What you want to report accurately on what you see? Because you want to be a journalist? Ooh, look at me, my pen and notebook.
Yeah. I mean, besides health infrastructure, economic opportunity, all sorts of stuff. America is the greatest country in the world, dude.
but yeah, so yeah, I see what you're saying. So I wanted to bring this up really quick because this is, speaking of boots on the ground, you can totally do that around the world, and it's a noble thing to do. You can also do that domestically some as well. My friends over at the Convo Couch are in South Florida right now because tonight Debbie Wasserman Schultz goes up against Jen Perlman, and I only spend so much time on electoral politics on this show because, as you've indicated and as all of my guests have indicated, it can be incredibly frustrating, nor is it the only vehicle for change. It's far from it, and I think direct action is kind of the king of the hill anyway, as far as actually fixing this place. But I would love it if Debbie Wasserman Schultz lost tonight. Of course, I would love to see Jen Perlman replace her. And so my friends at the Convo Couch ran into Debbie Wasserman Schultz today. Check this out. They just posted this video. They were driving by. So there's Jen's people.
There she is. Debbie.
That's Pasta from the Convo Couch.
How you doing today? Good. What are you doing?
Running for re-election.
Don't we know? How do you think your chances are today?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah.
Excited, hopeful.
Nice. Well, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Does he sound like? Did Pasta sound like he was? Did he sound like he was kind of like grinding his teeth almost?
Yeah.
Like he was like, "Oh yeah, how are you? I know that we need to be really, really nice. So you're not going to approach our cars. So good luck."
Yeah. I think he played it as tactful as he could to get the soundbite. I think I would have the last couple seconds. I would have been like, "Long live the corporate wing of the party. You're doing Lord's work. Thanks for all that payday loan endorsement stuff. Awesome."
You brought up payday loans. Like, gee, I wonder why the Democrats went along with not supporting the community bank part of the postals. I wonder why. Maybe one of them has a financial interest in payday loans. And by one of them, I mean more than one. But there's a certain prominent one named Debbie Wasserman Schultz who hopefully loses tonight. I mean, it's a long haul, man, because she's a very powerful incumbent. And when it comes to election integrity, I mean, that area is, I would say, leading the pack as far as the worst of the worst. I mean, when you look at 2000, when you look at what they did to Tim Canova.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I mean, it is just, I mean, what they did to him the second time around, there's just no freaking way. I mean, he got like way less than he got the first time on his second run, and he got the same percentage in every demographic. And he hired a couple statisticians on his own, and they kind of like did an analysis, and they said, Tim, the likelihood of that happening in the election, and I might be like misappropriating this a little bit, like it might not be a direct, like exactly what they said, but it's in this league. They equated it to like, it would be like getting struck by lightning twice.
Wow.
Like it was in that realm. I forget if that was the exact thing, but it was something that like unlikely. It was at that level of like totally unlikely of that happen, where every single demographic, the exact same percentage votes for you.
Yeah, and everybody's doing everybody dirty in these electoral elections. There's so much.
It's so brutal.
I think that's why there's been that. This is just my speculation. Is I think that the reason that the Democrats have never made a big deal about interstate crosscheck, the software that's on a number of kind of like voting booths or election systems in a number of states, Republican states, Republican governors, Republican majority legislatures, where it bounces names off the roll that have similar sounding names. Those names more predominantly are for minorities, and minorities more predominantly vote for Democrats. So it helps the Republicans win elections. It helped Donald Trump win elections. According to the work of Greg Palast, it bounced a lot. Like, we're talking 7.5 million people in total off rolls in different states, of which they don't even let them know this. But like, why the fuck are the Democrats not screaming about this? The only reason I could think they're not is that they've got their dirty tricks in some other way, and it'd be like mutually assured destruction.
Well, they do most of their dirty tricks during the primaries, and then Republicans do most of theirs during the general. And at the end of the day, it's a concentrated effort to make sure nobody that wants to disrupt the apple cart gets through. You stifle the progressives during the primaries, and then you stifle the corporate Democrat in the general to really make sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like, hey, I outwardly support Wall Street. I subtly support Wall Street. Okay, so we're going to try to screw over that subtle person in the general. But first, we're going to make sure they get to the general. Because before the general, there's somebody else who's like, I'm not for Wall Street. I actually want to be a public servant, and I want to be a public official, and I want to do policies that will actually help people. And they're like, well, we're going to try to make sure you don't get to the general. If by chance you do, we're really going to try to make sure we screw you over.
You're 100% right. That's exactly what it is. But it's like, I really see it now, I think in a weird way, clearer than I've seen it, where it's like, okay, the government has been completely taken over. The levers of power of the state have been completely taken over by the business class, by the ultra capitalists, by the corporations. So we have this corporate state, and the media landscape, the corporate media landscape, I'm going to say from Fox all the way through NPR, is the propagandistic corporate mouthpiece for the state. So it's like the whole thing is just this entity, this cabal. And if you could separate from that and just see it for what it is, it can at the very least keep you from getting revved up or spun around like a top every day by whatever story of the day they want to emotionally dysregulate you by, depending on which cultural echo chamber you subscribe to. You know, it's so true. So I, at least with this level of, I don't even call it cynicism. I think this level of clarity about it, it's like, at least I can look at these news channels from the perspective of, okay, what agenda are they pushing? Not that I'm ever gonna get any truth from them or news from them.
Well, yeah, I mean, because all the corporate media, like, they all subscribe to the same formula. They really are. I mean, so many people, they make it out like Fox News is the only culprit, and Fox News is terrible, abso-freaking-lutely. And but MSNBC follows the same playbook. CNN follows the same playbook. You know, I mean, all the right wing commentators were number one when Obama was president, because the people that didn't like Obama, they really needed their anti-Obama catnip. Now Rachel Maddow's number one because people need their anti-Trump catnip. And that's all she does. That's all she does. She doesn't offer an actual analysis of the problem. No one at MSNBC does. They're not going to tell you about what's going on in Flint. They're not going to tell you about DAPL. They're not going to tell you about what's really going on with healthcare, because when the commercial time comes, who are all their advertisers? Big pharma, big oil. You think they're trying to get the word out? No, they're buying favorable coverage. Yeah. They're buying favorable coverage. Oh, and guess what? You're not going to hear an honest story about net neutrality because they're owned by Comcast.
Very true. All true. And, you know, even NPR, we'll go, well, NPR, you know, it's National Public Radio. When I was in DC, I went to this little, little house party, a little get together, dinner party sort of thing. And I'm hanging out with two friends, and literally right before we walk in, because it was like a friend of a friend, I'm like, oh, whose house is this? She's like, oh yeah, it's a bunch of people that work at NPR. And I was like working at RT America at the time. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I was like, how much can I tell them about what I do without telling them where I work, because their hair is going to go on fire. But so I was just telling them I'm a comedian. I work for Redacted Tonight, political satire show, anti-corporate, anti-war, outside the two-party system. They're like, oh, interesting. Well, and then and they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it's on YouTube. Deal with it. But so then.
Did you do that?
No, I didn't do that.
You should have. Why didn't you close with that?
I don't know.
And then give him a card. Be like, Jonathan O'Donnell, I'm on the TV.
yeah, I'm on the TV. Yeah. Nice to meet you. So then I'm talking to one of them who's in their advertising department or in their sponsorship department. And she just told me, she's like, yeah, you know, it's the same thing like any other, you know, news outlet. She's like, we call it sponsorship. We're never supposed to call it advertising, but it's the same thing. They just pay us an advertiser. And I was like, all right, good to know.
Yeah, well, and did she say who those advertisers are? Because that's the bigger thing. I mean, it'd be one thing if they just got, you know, because I know in non-commercial radio it's called what's it called? It's called like mentions, Instead of like advertisements, it's called mentions. And there's certain things that you can't. I mean, it's kind of goofy the way they do it. And I know this because I did non-commercial radio in college at a community radio station. I loved it. It was amazing. It, I guess prepared me for what I'd go on to do. But you can't have like a direct call to action. Like you can't be like, check out the tacos at Taco Tim's because they're great. You can't do that. But what you can say is Taco Tim's makes tacos from all natural ingredients sourced from, whatever. You can't say they're great tacos or good tacos, or, you can just say they're tacos and this is how they're made. And then you can say to learn more. You can't say go to their website. You can't do that. But you can say to learn more, go to, Tim. But again, this isn't some non-commercial community radio station that is just getting, mentions from a local restaurant run by a dude in the community who's just selling tacos. They get Coke money from the Koch brothers. They get these big corporate interests that are sponsoring them. So NPR is doing the same thing that all these other corporate entities are doing, and there's nothing public about that at all.
Absolutely. And even if they're not doing the ad reads per se, they're still getting that money. So they're not going to be doing hypercritical coverage of those outlets. It just doesn't work that way. It's the same thing where it's like, do Americans realize that the Washington Post is owned by Jeff fucking Bezos? Do we not, like, how the fuck do people know that and then still be like, well, I'll just read the Washington Post? It's crazy. And then realize like, oh, Amazon does all of the, Amazon's web services, does all of the cloud computing for the CIA and other intelligence agencies. Like we're talking years ago, 4 years ago or something like that, it was 600 billion for just the CIA. Now I believe it's well over $1 trillion, and it's like multiple intelligence agencies, if not all of them. It's so fucking obvious. You know what I mean? It's like you got that. You got former heads of the NSA and CIA as analysts, on-air analysts on CNN. You know what I mean?
They're proud of it. They're proud of it. They advertise that. They're like, yeah, here's former intelligence. Here's former CIA people. They're telling the news now. They're coming. We want to hear what they have to say.
But then if I'm like, yeah, I think these corporate media outlets are compromised by the deep state. It's like, dude, you
crazy.
are out to lunch.
Crazy. It's all that state media we need to worry about. And when we say state media and when we say bureaus, we just mean Russia and China. We don't mean England. We don't mean Canada. We don't mean Scotland. We don't mean Japan even. It's just Russia and China. And by the way, America has bureaus in other countries. That's how news and information works. And that's all fine too. But, when it comes to RT America, Sputnik America, Xinhai, it's just the Russia and Chinese outlets. Those are the only ones we use the FARA Act on, which, by the way, that act originated to combat Nazis. That's what it exists for. And we're using it against American bureaus run by American citizens, only if the outlet is Russian, or Chinese.
Well, you know that.
Wonder why.
Yeah, because Americans' foreign policy, I don't know if you know this or not, but the war on terror just sort of stopped. It just sort of ended because nobody started talking about it anymore. We pivoted away. The war on terror just that's like so fucking, I don't know, 2016 or whatever. But
we moved on to new branding. We're still doing it, but we still got 9 countries in the bank.
Yeah, but it's like now, no, the foreign policy strategy of America is containment of Russia and China. So in order to maintain certain aspects of that containment, you have to have a good amount of Americans fucking hating Russia and China, at least to an extent, where it's like any sanctions they want to slap on those countries, they're like, okay, yeah, we're fine with that. We understand that, which is why right now the conservative corporate media echo chamber through places like Fox is just every day flogging China. It's like, China did this virus to us, the Chinese flu, the Kung flu. I mean, that one's racist, but at least it's a little bit funny. But and
did they actually say that?
They call it the Kung flu. Trump calls it.
Wow, really? Yeah. I've actually never heard that. Wow.
Yeah, I know, such villainous shit, but it's like whatever. So you got that. So now it's like a segment of the population that listens to that corporate echo chamber fucking hates China. And there's real effects of that. Asian Americans are being assaulted, having property, like graffitied, all sorts of fucking crazy shit. The idea of like Asian people feeling comfortable as tourists coming to America, all that stuff, going to university.
Sure.
So the ripple effect of this is a lot. But also, then you got the corporate liberal echo chamber. Those people have like a Russiagate worm in their brain that can be activated at any time. Like they fucking hate Russia reflexively with no critical analysis. It's like, for the love of fucking Christ, just look at 5 videos that Aaron Mate did about Russiagate, and you can like separate from it. Just come on, they got flogged and lied to for
Aaron Mate, Glenn Greenwald, Noam Chomsky. I mean, anyone that took the time to just, it's like there was this big rug just thrown out, and then a tree was put in front of the rug, and then there was this big ass forest, and people were just staring at the tree. And journalists like Aaron and when it, and Glenn, and when it came to that issue, they just fucking moved over from the tree, lifted up the rug, saw the freaking forest, and was like, "Hey guys, what about?" And they're like, "Ah!"
Yeah, dude. And I will tell you something that I will always appreciate, because working at RT American during that time, it was incredible. It was already a stressful job, pushing out these stories and stuff. But on top of that, just the pressure of Russiagate looming and being flogged constantly. The fact that that you guys at the Jimmy Dore show were constantly calling out, that always meant so much to me, because it was like, oh, this is like a voice of reason, a voice of sanity that is amplified. I know there's a lot of people that are connecting with that show, and it was just nice to hear, because there were things that I agreed with, but I couldn't say, because it would just be like, you're just fucking holding water.
Oh yeah. You needed an outsider to say it. You needed.
Yeah. So that was awesome.
Well, so let's get to and John, look at the bright side of all this. Someday Bezos is going to be emperor, and when that happens, like somehow this show is going to be found. I don't know what the internet's going to look like at that point, but there'll be someone with like a super high tech VPN. They're going to find this show, and they're going to be like, those two assholes. They said there was a problem with all this shit. I wonder if they have specials out or something. I'm going to see if I have enough Bezos bucks to buy it.
Yeah, maybe they'll.
They were like, he owns a newspaper. He has deals with the CIA. He's on his way to become the first trillionaire. There's some weird stuff floating around all here. It's weird when you just let a corporation take over your country. This is maybe a bad thing. I think there's a word in the dictionary for it. I think it's actually called fascism. I think that's the frickin' dictionary definition of what fascism is. But these two assholes, they saw a problem here.
Yeah, maybe some Bezos bucks. Maybe you can throw some Bezos bucks towards my subscribers' Substack account. But
there you go, buddy.
But what I want, which I haven't set up yet, working on it. But what I wanted to say is that what it actually is, what our government actually is an inverted totalitarian state. Sheldon Wallen laid this out. Great political scientist, passed away a few years ago. Someone who Chris Hedges looked up to. Someone who Chris Hedges said is the best political scientist of, I believe he said, of the 21st century, or contemporary. So maybe is this early part of the 21st century when he was alive. And he was a professor at Princeton and at Berkeley, and he laid out his theory or his explanation of the American government being an inverted totalitarian system, not a traditional totalitarian system where concentrated state power has control over every aspect of American life in a repressive way. Instead, because the corporate state has taken over, the corporate powers have taken over the state, and they're the ones who are extracting so much wealth from us and keeping us under thumb and keeping us uninformed and each other's throats. It's an inverted type of totalitarianism. And he said the only way that can work is if there is the mouthpiece for it, which is the corporate news outlets. And what they can do is turn the American people against each other, and can also keep their political IQs low, so they keep shooting themselves in the foot, kind of going against their own self-interests. And things like that. And basically, he said any kind of attempt at revolution, he was saying relative to how powerful the American military is, National Guard, how militarized the police are, and things, in his opinion, not being repressed enough to try to undertake a full-fledged violent revolution. He said that literally at this point in time, in the beginnings of this revolution, just telling people the truth about stuff is a revolutionary act. And I completely agree with that.
Well, I just tweeted this recently to draw it back to like what we started talking about with the DNC convention. You know, I just tweeted, I'm like, look, any society where somebody like a John Kasich is not considered like as far right as you can get on the spectrum. I mean, that's just definitionally politically what that guy is. It doesn't matter how nice he sounds to have a beer with. I mean, that guy, his political ideology, he is far right. Any society where he is not considered far right, that's not, I mean, that is an authoritarian theocracy where someone like him is not considered far right.
Ron, he's the adult in the room.
Standing at that goofy looking crossroads thing.
It's fucking nuts.
As a Robert Johnson fan, I found it insulting.
Hey, as a Leonard Cohen fan, I found the Brian Williams thing infuriating.
Me too. Me too.
Leonard Cohen was a fucking Buddhist peace activist, you fucking asshole. And a poet, man, a real fucking poet. I saw him at a concert with my brother.
You're lucky.
At Madison Square Garden in 2012. During the Old Ideas tour. He played for 3.5 hours. I swear to God. He went through, and then at the end of the show, he thanked by name everybody at the venue, all the way to like the fucking
that's awesome.
People, like a complete class act. You know, he opened up so humble. He's like, I know there's a lot of, things you can do, and it's hard to get out and spend your hard-earned money. So thank you. Truly means a lot that you came out to see us tonight.
That's so good. So I got to ask you, just because Cohen came up, are you an Alleluia guy or not an Alleluia guy?
I mean, yeah, I am.
All right.
I love Jeff Buckley too. I love Jeff.
Yeah,
Buckley.
Me too.
Are there people that are not an Alleluia guy? Like they can't.
Yeah, there's people. Some are Cohen fans, some are just not Cohen fans, but they're just not on board. And I think it's one of the most beautiful songs ever written.
I have cried to that song a bunch of times in my life.
I think it's safe to say I have too. I mean, I listen to it. I'm not a religious guy at all. But every Christmas Eve, I will listen to that song. I think in many ways it is the most, as far as like an actual hymn for humans, I really think it nails it because it's a song like it's not for somebody from a certain belief system. It's not for somebody of a certain background. It is for human beings. Because it is about the condition of love and how throughout our society, as messed up as it is, and as brutal and ugly as it is, and he uses imagery all throughout history. He uses imagery. He does use some religious imagery to get the point across. But that song is about the fact that we as humans, as flawed as we are, we can actually love. And that's one of the most powerful things we have. The most powerful thing we have. The only thing, in my opinion, worth believing in. That's the only, you ask me what I believe in, I will say love. That is it. That is the only thing I have ever or will ever believe in, because I think it's amazing that despite all of our flaws, we can still love each other.
Yeah, I want to go on the record and say I also believe in love. No, I mean, the song is absolutely beautiful. And what I think is so cool is there are like dozens upon dozens of other verses that he wrote for that song that have not been like publicly released and stuff like that.
I didn't know that. I did not know that. That is interesting.
And I always thought I had this kind of social experiment, like I wanted to joke in my head where it's like, okay, what would happen if you're in one of these like mega clubs when those were a thing, like mega clubs, and there's like thousands of people in these big like clubs that would be over on like the west side of Manhattan and stuff like that. Everybody's dancing to like nonsense dance music and stuff like that. And then suddenly like you locked them all in and made them listen to Hallelujah on repeat, like what that would like do to their psyche, like that sort of immediate transition. You know what I mean? I don't know. But
they'd all start hugging each other.
Yeah.
They'd all start hugging each other, and then I don't know what would happen. Or they get really mad.
Yeah, maybe the people that don't like it, it's like maybe they think it's like overplayed or something, but it's not. The truth is, I only found out about that song. I found out about the Jeff Buckley version first, and it was only when I went to Ireland, when I studied abroad in Ireland, and 2002 to 2003, which was very interesting because that was towards the build up to the war in Iraq. So I remember before I went over there, when I was still in the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, I remember taking a bus down to
yeah, that's right. We're both Big Ten guys. You went to Michigan. I went to IU.
Oh, right on, right on.
We've talked about that before, but it's been a minute.
Yeah. Look at us bridging the gap, huh? But
we're rivals.
Yeah. I define myself by the colors of my school. Okay.
I loved it though, man. Did you have a good time in Michigan?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah,
I loved it. I love IU. I even my wife and I did like potentially talk about like, well, if California, if something crazy happens and we need to leave California, where's like, we made a list of places all over the world where we might go. And actually Bloomington, Indiana is on that list. I'm like, you know what? It's a college town. I love it. It's cheap as hell. And we could just walk around and get everything we need. And if I ever decided to go back for like a PhD or something, it's right there. I just walk down the street. It's right there. If I ever decided to go back, I don't think I ever would, but if I ever did, you never know what life might bring. So
yeah, that's a cool town. If the Comedy Attic survives, it's one of the best clubs around. Yeah, Ann Arbor is great. Really, really cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that so I remember then taking the bus down to DC and protesting to the war in Iraq.
This before you went to Ireland.
Yeah, before I went to Ireland, 2002. And then the other part of 2002 when I ended up, I remember marching and protesting with Irish people in Dublin who were protesting the war. There were protests all over the world for that war. And I remember being an American in Ireland at that point. And George W. Bush was president, you were such an asshole until proven otherwise, where it was like immediately Irish people would be like, oh, you're American? Did you vote for George W. Bush? And I'd be like, no, dude. But also Irish people were so hypocritical. And that's what I would talk about when I did stand-up there, because I was doing stand-up at the time there. And they would be being like talking shit about America, but they'd be wearing like a full Levi's denim outfit, like eating McDonald's, smoking Marlboro Light cigarettes, and drinking Budweiser. I'm like, you are more American than I've ever been in my life right now, dude. And it was because Ireland had recently, their economy had been doing really well. Their economy was called the Celtic Tiger because they had such low corporate taxes and they had a highly educated English-speaking workforce. So all this tech stuff went over. That's why
I was going to say, I was in Dublin about, was it a year ago or 2 years ago now? It was either 2018 or 20. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago at this point. And I mean, like the main drag of Dublin just kind of looks like Santa Monica without a coastline. I mean, it really does. Like it's just all American corporations, and yeah, like they'll tell you like that's why it happened. They all came over here or over there, and yeah, so like they definitely have like an Americanized thing going on there. It's scary when you see that throughout the world. You're like, this is there's some stuff we do that's kind of cool culturally. You should just like that stuff and leave everything else alone. You really shouldn't. Just enjoy our comedians and musicians, and everything else, leave it. Our literature, everything else, just don't touch any of that.
Yeah, because most of the stuff that we do cool culturally is railing against this fucking repressive, propagandistic corporate state hellscape that we're fucking in. It's crazy. And in Ireland, Irish people did not deal well with getting money for the first time. They were not dealing with that particularly gracefully. And because there was that saying in the 80s, they said in the 80s, the only thing Ireland exported was people. Because the economy. But
yeah. So I want to talk about you some, man, because we're running out of time here. So I wanted to get to the interview portion for a little bit. So what have you been up to? I know that you you kind of were away for a bit. I don't know what all you want to share or not share. I don't want to, but
yeah, let's talk about it. I was
no, I'd love to, but
I do like how diplomatically you're like, you were away for a bit.
Well, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know like what, I mean, I know you said like, well, I'm an open book, but I kind of want you to share what you want to share. And
of course, dude, of course. Okay. So, so I'm doing well. Like I'm doing well. I feel very healthy. I feel very in control. I'm in a good place creatively. I'm amongst all of this madness. I'm optimistic for the future. I think I'm taking care of myself in a very, very kind of like, I would say holistic well-managed way. But the thing is this, I have a diagnosis. I have bipolar 1 disorder. It used to be called manic depression. Sounded a lot cooler, but they changed it. But,
wait, why did they change it? Just like a DSM, like they just changed it, or?
Yeah, they got to change it. I don't know. They changed it. I don't actually know why. Maybe they thought that it was a more accurate sounding, but I don't think it is, because like manic dash depression, it sort of implies more of an entire mood spectrum. Bipolar just is like two extremes, but whatever. But anyway, I have what's called bipolar 1 disorder. It's a mood disorder where there can be these, revved up, exuberant, kind of like highly elated moods where one's mind is moving very quickly, and there's a lot of thoughts there and stuff like that. And for a while, it can be in this range called hypomania, where it can be actually advantageous, where there is a lot of kind of creativity happening. There's a lot of intuition, but it can be very scattered, where it's hard to actually complete things, like complete ideas or projects and stuff like that. But then for some folks, it can cross a threshold into like full-blown mania. And anything full-blown, never good. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So and then what can happen is like, it can actually, the thinking can be really off, and it can actually be psychotic, so like kind of believing things that aren't real, making inferences and connections that are very spurious, that aren't there. And basically, it can cause a person to just sort of like, act inappropriately with people. Like there's sometimes you could just be like kind of nonstop talking, saying sort of things that don't make sense, believing them very deeply. And it could also, your ego can get really unhinged. And I'll just talk from an I perspective. My ego can get very unhinged, and I can get so grandiose thinking that I become messianic, where it's like, I really do believe that there's this weight of the world on my shoulders. Like eminently, there's either going to be this heaven on earth scenario or hell on earth scenario. And like, I have the answers. And because, and I'll be goddamned if I'm going to let hell on earth happen, under my watch. So what starts to happen is I'll alienate myself from people who know me well and care about me, but I'll have all of this energy and in a lot of instances, all of this charisma. So I'll start connecting with other people who don't know me, who don't have any frame of reference, and maybe they're not the best folks to end up to be hanging out with. And like my decision-making gets bad. Like I know that for me, the way my brain works, that THC, weed really kind of revs me up and kind of throws me off the side of the earth. So it's just something that I can't do. I'm pretty fired up as a person. So it's like, I can't do that. And I never want to do that. But when I start getting manic, for something clicks in my judgment or my brain where I just crave it. I just crave THC.
Sure.
I'm just like kind of like directing my entire life around that. So basically, I've had these manic episodes. I've ended up in and out of jail. I've ended up in and out of hospitals and stuff like that. And basically, it's the kind of what goes up must come down sort of thing. So it's like after like a manic episode, then as equally high as I've been, I'll be as equally low. So I've also experienced those deep, sustained clinical depressions, and that type of pain. It's kind of pain in a different way, because when I'm manic, it's not just like fun and games. It can be very scary and emotionally overwhelming, and at times exhilarating. And the depression thing is very, very difficult to process and deal with, and then figure out. And I've never attempted suicide, but I've definitely had what's called ideations of suicide, which I think a lot of people have had, where it's like they're either active or passive, but a person feels comforted by the fact that suicide is an option because they can't really see a path forward to have a worthwhile life or something like that. And that actually is a thing when people are depressed, that people could realize that these suicidal ideations are part of the symptom of being depressed, where it's actually convincing your brain is convincing you that committing suicide is a comforting thing to do. And if you can realize that that's a symptom and it'll pass, maybe that can keep you from acting on that thing. So I think that's important. But basically, after that, it's the sort of thing where I have to figure out and find the will and the fortitude to kind of claw myself out of it. And a lot of times, it has to do with exercise. Exercise really, I know it's silly as platitudinal as it might sound, exercise is just as helpful and important as medication. Medication is not for everybody. For me, it's part of the picture. Another part of it, for me, yoga, meditation, all those things, healthy diet, low inflammation diet. The way that I do it, over 2 years, I've been like, whole food, plant-based, vegan. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but for me, it works. And then also, in addition to that, for me, Ron, like having the creative outlet of doing comedy has always been the thing that has allowed my sort of sense of self to return, and some sort of sense of confidence and joy in my life to return. has been finding the courage to get back and do stand-up. So doubling back to why I went away and why I left Redacted Tonight, which I was on from the beginning, from May 2014 we started. I left around February, March 2019 because you know how the old saying goes, like, have a manic episode and take an extended leave of absence from work once, shame on me. Have a manic episode and take an extended leave of absence from work twice, even more shame on me. I'm supposed to make you laugh, but that's fine. But yeah, so it's the sort of thing now. I've realized that, I was bummed out to leave on the show on those terms. And it was like management stood behind me for a long time. Lee's stood behind me the whole time. We're still incredibly close, and dear friends. And it's the sort of thing where it's like, for a while I was like, oh, this is awful. Like I worked so hard for this opportunity. It's a dream gig for me in a lot of ways because, we're covering these anti-corporate stories. And it's like, wow, this is like, I've always been into this stuff. But it's also the sort of thing where, the job for me after 5 years, it was incredibly stressful and it was draining and it was hard to just focus on that stuff all the time. And I always knew that something I wanted to do was use comedy to destigmatize mental illness, to destigmatize mental health issues. And I really have now, I've jumped into that in a way that I'm proud of in terms of a lot of the stand-up that I have been crafting that's on hold right now has been really a lot, just all about that stuff, which I find rewarding to figure out how to make funny in an honest way. And the podcast that I do now called Take Your Pill Psychopath, basically it's, it uses comedy to destigmatize mental health issues. The log line is exploiting mental health for personal profit, trademark, but that's just kind of funny. But so I do that, and
that is funny.
Like what trademark? I have to trademark that because someone's gonna steal it. But so I do that, and then I have folks on, and people, I'll talk about my stuff, they'll talk about their shit, and I do actually think that is a privilege I have. Like that's actually a privilege I have where I can talk about that stuff as a straight white dude, where there's so much stigma around it, but I can do it, and that actually is how I use white privilege. I think so many people with white privilege, they just get like parallels with white guilt, or they have white saviorism or whatever. I think people are trying to figure it out. Anyway, that's one of the things that I do. And I think that the more and more we talk about this, it's one of these last dominoes that really needs to fall around stigmatized stuff. And I think it's happening, but I want to be part of that. And I think Americans, that we're taking our mental wellness and our physical wellness into our own hands because we realize that these institutions, they're not going to fucking be there for us. They're fucking corporate entities. So I think we all actually need to work together to do this. That's why, you're saying direct action is where it's at. I agree. I think that this qualifies under direct action, is what I'm doing, but also mutual aid, this mutual aid revolution that is happening. That to me is so fucking exciting.
Well, wait, let's go there last. Let's go there last. Cause I want to, I remember when, when we first became friends, like you reached out to me or I reached out to you and, it's like, obviously we had a lot of mutuals, like Lee and I are buddies and you were like, yeah, man, I'm on Lee's show and you're on Jimmy's show. And I remember, we would talk about comedy, we would talk about ideas, we would talk about shows. And one day I got a call from you and I picked it up. And, getting back to some of what you said about the THC thing, you said that, I have a really good high going right now. And I was like, oh, that's cool, John. Cause I didn't know that much about you. And, you said that you were high and you said, my girlfriend doesn't like it when I use pot. But I really like it. And I was like, all right. And I just thought you maybe had like an edible that hit you kind of hard. I didn't think much of it. And then the next day I had a voicemail. I don't know when you called it, but it would have been overnight Pacific time. But I had a voicemail from you and it was just an hour and a half of you didn't, I didn't listen to like the whole thing. Cause like eventually I thought it was like a pocket dial, maybe like you pocket dialed me and the voicemail picked up, but then I was listening. I was like, no, he's trying. Like it was kind of like, not super audible, but you were in fact talking to me. Like you were said, but you weren't finishing your sentences. You weren't, and that was when I realized that, you had mental illness. Like that was when I found out about it, because I think I wanted to, I was like, what's going on? Like, what was this? Like, this was more than just he had an edible and got a little too high. Like something might really be wrong. So
wow, I vaguely remember sitting out in my little like kind of like back area where like the where I had like outdoor space, and I remember initially a phone call, but I don't remember what we talked about. I also don't remember the second phone call. Wow. So it was literally like I was just like rambling to you on a voice.
You were just rambling, and you weren't, I mean, it wasn't like cohesive stuff. And that happened a few times. And, I mean, we were all just kind of concerned,
Well, I'll tell you, like, that's the thing that's like, it's so important to me to do everything in my power to stay well, because it makes me feel bad. And like I don't want to make other people worry about me as best as possible. I feel bad putting out friends and things. Those are like little, like, they're kind of like little like scars on my soul. But I also, I don't feel bad about myself. But what I will say is that, I'm sorry about leaving you those messages, and I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I mean, you don't need to apologize. There's no apology necessary. I just, getting into what you're saying, like when you go down these paths. So you found that a combination of medicine, exercise, and just overall like being aware of the wellness and being creative, that kind of like 4-part, approach has really helped you stay.
Diet too, low inflammation
diet. Yes.
Because it's like now there's all this understanding that there's as many neurons in the stomach as there are in the brain, which is such a crazy thing to like internalize. So so it's like, what's going on in your gut affects your mood too. But yeah, it's like, and for me, I'm on lithium and Lamictal. And it's interesting because people hear lithium and it kind of freaks them out because they hear it as some sort of like really like old wave sort of medication.
Well, it's one of my favorite songs, so I don't know.
Yeah. That's what I like to say. I'm like, Kurt Cobain had bipolar disorder.
He did. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I think I say sometimes, I don't know if that's true, but it sounds good. But
well, he had something. I don't know if it was diagnosed bipolar or what, but he was, I mean, as a kid, he was hyperactive, and he was put on a couple different things. And so, yeah, I guess I don't know for sure that it was bipolar, but yeah, I mean, he definitely had something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've looked into it, I've read about it, where it's like, there's a lot of speculation that he was, and he probably was, but I don't know if he ever got the official diagnosis of it. They say the same thing about like Drew Barrymore or whatever.
It was a different era, which is crazy to think about. I mean, it's sometimes it blows my mind that it's like, oh yeah, he's been dead for over 20 years now. Well over 20 years now. I mean, is it going to be, well, wait a second. Is next year will be the 30th for Nevermind, right? Right? 91.
91.
So 2020.
And did he die in 94?
He died in 94. So next year it will be the 30th for Nevermind. And then 2024, it'll be 30 since he died.
Crazy.
Fuck, man.
Can I say one thing? Is this funny or mean? That like Dave Grohl seems like way cooler and like better of a person than the Foo Fighters music is as music. Is that?
I don't think it's me. I like some of their stuff, and I like Pat Smear. I don't think it's me. No, I mean, I do think it's funny.
Could you imagine if I said that to him? I'm like, dude, you're way cooler than the Foo Fighters. What are you doing, man?
I think he'd laugh. I don't think he would take it personally. I think he'd be fine with the fact that, like, hey, man, Foo Fighters aren't for everyone, but look out at this sold out arena. They're for some people.
First of all, I would never fucking say that to him. But I saw him once at the Black Cat in DC.
Yeah, cool. That's an amazing venue, and to get to see him there. All right.
Well, I just saw him hanging out there, not performing.
Oh, I thought you meant he was like maybe doing a secret show or something.
No, he was just
he was just hanging out. All right.
And because he's a partial owner of that place, and he comes from the the DC area, and he was just like grabbing a beer, and he was just sort of like fucking dancing in this side room. I didn't have anything to say to him, but I wanted to be like, Dave, we need to be friends. I can't explain why. But
I bet he would have been more taken aback by that than by the Foo Fighters joke. I think he'd laugh at the Foo Fighters joke, and he'd be and you could also, I mean, you could bring up, be like, hey, I'm a big Scream fan though.
oh
I'm sure
yeah,
he'd be fine with that. I mean, I don't know if you are. I mean, I'm a Scream fan, but you know, you could always just say that.
Yeah,
Just be like, I mean, you could say that to anybody. Like, hey, man, not a big Foo Fighters guy. I mean, I enjoy the Foo Fighters, but you don't. Like I'm not a big Foo Fighters guy, but the Germs, Scream, I'm on board.
look, Ron, I don't fucking hate the Foo Fighters. You know what I mean? It's like, guys, some tracks I like, I could take them or leave them. Yeah, but anyway, back around. So interestingly, like, so I'm on this amount of lithium, and if you're on too much, you can feel kind of sluggish. But I'm on an amount that, for me, really, if like right now, it's like, okay, if I could be on this amount because of this other medication called Lamictal, which is interesting because that's actually an anticonvulsant. I mean, initially it was given to people for seizures, and then they found out it had secondary mood stabilizing capabilities. Because the truth is, they don't know the active, the active ingredient or the mechanisms that make these medications work. And for a while, I was like rail against that, but now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, but like, if it works, you know, like, would you rather like know how it works and have it not work, or not know how it works and have it be helpful? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's complicated.
It's an evolving thing.
Yeah.
It's like, it is called a social science, meaning it evolves like anything else. And the human brain is insanely complicated.
It's very true. You're absolutely right.
It's insanely complicated. So it's like when people, you know, when people like attack like psychology and psychiatry and just attack the body of work because it hasn't figured everything out yet, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding. And I think it's come very, very far.
I agree. I think one of the things that complicates it is, unfortunately, psychiatry side of things is rolled up with big pharma. And
sure. Oh yeah, there are those. Absolutely. And that's very real. Overprescribing does happen. You get they accept the free lunches, from these pharma execs. Absolutely. That's all very real. And that certainly dilutes things without a doubt.
So interestingly, they found out that Lamictal has secondary mood stabilizing capabilities. So they started giving people with bipolar disorder. Turns out people that have bipolar 2 disorder, which is more of the depressions, and then followed by hypomania, like a mania light thing, some of those folks manage well just being on Lamictal. Oftentimes you don't want to give somebody that's bipolar a traditional antidepressant because it can flip them into the mania. So they're on beyond like Lamictal. I've tried at times to just be on Lamictal, but it doesn't work as well to control against manias. But because I'm on Lamictal, it's allowed my psychiatrist to kind of like put me on a dose of lithium that is the lower end of it, still like being enough in my, enough percentage in my bloodstream to kind of like, calm me at the edges. So I can, and so that's just part of it though. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of the doctors still, sometimes, unfortunately, they'll just give the medication first, which sometimes that needs to be in place to get things going. But all these other aspects, these are things that everybody should be doing, like, especially with how fucked up our country is and how just damaging the corporate state is to us and how fucking confused we are because of it. It's like, it's a Herculean task to push through all of these layers of this shit. And you also have to have a lot of free fucking time. So it's the sort of thing where it's like, for me, doing something like yoga, I love it. So I do it now. I'm like every day, hour yoga guy. And then right after that, I do my, whatever I'm feeling, 10 to 20 minutes meditation, and I get going with my day. And it's a sort
That's
of thing.
awesome.
Yeah. And
I mean, you're more disciplined than I've tried yoga over the quarantine. That was like, because my wife's really into it. And so I'm like, okay, I couldn't do it. I feel like it's just, and this is not a bash on yoga at all. I know it's celebrated by so many people, but like, to me, it was just like, you're just trying to like put your body into punctuation and holding it for like a really long time. I just couldn't do it. I was gonna be like, here's some rain noises, make yourself a question mark. And I'm like, I'm not connecting with this the way people do.
That is such a shitty way to look at yoga, dude.
I'm trying.
No, I like that you're trying. It's weird. There's this weird, like, I'm not saying that you subscribe to this, but there's this weird perception still in America that like yoga's for women or something like that. Is the one thing you hear?
No, yoga's for everybody. No,
yeah.
I don't hear any of that. But yeah,
no,
I just tried and I just couldn't do it.
Well, the thing, it's like people and other people say like, oh, I'm not flexible, I can't do yoga. It's like, well, that's why you do it. And it's a sort of thing where I'm not like good at it. You know what I mean? I would say I'm not terrible at it, but there's shit I can't do. Like my nemesis is crow pose. Like I can't do fucking crow pose, dog. That's
Is that the exclamation point one, or which one's that?
That's the one where you're on your hands, and then you lift your two knees behind your arms and you like balance yourself up in the air. I can't do that one. But there's a lot of shit I can do. But anyway, I like it because there's a physicality to it. It's a different type of strength that you develop, and there's also a meditative quality to it too. And the people in the community are nice as well. What I wanted to say is, so I wasn't prescribed. I've been dealing with bipolar 1 disorder for going on 20 years, and I was not prescribed lithium until 14 years into it, because it went kind of out of fashion when they were trying all these different mood stabilizers and atypical antipsychotics, which sound scary. And some of them have really bad side effect profiles, but some of them help people. And if someone's acutely manic, like really spun out and psychotic, being on an antipsychotic for a short period of time, maybe like a week or a couple weeks, can kind of break that psychosis. But it's like, really, you had to name them atypical antipsychotics. It sounds terrifying to take.
Yeah, I wish I feel like they could have done a softer name there. I feel like maybe even like non-traditional. I mean, could they have gone there? I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're more fluent in this stuff than I am.
That's a good point. But you know why they're called atypical antipsychotics? Because they're the second wave of antipsychotics. The first wave had more sort of like dulling side effects and more like a heavier side effect profile. So because these ones are, compared to that, lesser in the side effects, they're atypical compared to the other antipsychotics. Isn't that
so
weird?
why didn't they just call it second wave? Why didn't they just call it, like, I don't listen to atypical ska. I listen to
exactly. You know what I mean? It's like a joke that I have in my special where I'd be like, one of the weirdest medications I was on for a little while was called Saffris. It wasn't weird because of like the nightmares or the tricky boner sitch. It was weird because when it was marketed on the box, that's what it said. It said Saffris, black cherry flavor sublingual atypical antipsychotic. Oh, yummy! Fucking crazy.
This is an atypical thing, but it's a very, very American flavor, man.
Well,
Cherry
like,
red.
Wait a second. Any chance you got that shit in blue raspberry or cookies and cream? Come on, help a brother out. I'm seeing dead people over here.
So where can people go to learn more about you?
Oh, me? Okay.
Yeah, you.
Dude, I would love if any of the Placonians, the Placonites, would just go to jfodnews.com, jfodnews.com. You could join that, subscribe to that for free, and you get interesting, kind of like fun newsletters from me. Find out about my podcast, which you could check out at Take Your Pills Psychopath, every place. And yeah, at my YouTube channel, just type in John F. O'Donnell. Please subscribe there. But yeah, jfodnews.com. Every time I see that someone subscribes, it makes me smile really big. So that makes me really happy.
That's awesome, man. Dude, thanks so much for doing this. I'm so glad that things are going well for you. It's been awesome to reconnect with you. And give a couple shout outs here. Jonas, thank you very much for the Super Chat contribution today. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it immensely. And Jonas says, you need more donations. Well, thank you very much, Jonas. I appreciate your Super Chat. And again, Super Chats do keep this show on the air. And if you're also interested in supporting the show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/Ron Placone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of cool stuff. You get an exclusive stream once a week. You get an exclusive Zoom show once a week. And I'm doing theme songs for my patrons now. So if you ever wanted a theme song, you can get a Get Your News On with Ron-esque theme song by joining my Patreon. And again, that's for a give what you can level. Any amount, you give the same thing. So whatever you're comfortable with, if you are so interested and able, jfodnews.com, go there. John, thank you so much again. Awesome to connect with you. Jonas, again, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. We'll be back tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to be live with Fiorella from the Convo Couch. She's down in South Florida right now. We watched that video. She's going to be covering what happens tonight between Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Jen Perlman, which, again, if you're in the South Florida area, I do encourage you to support Jen Perlman. It'd be awesome if she unseated Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but we're going to be talking about it tomorrow. Whether we're celebrating or not, we're going to be talking about it 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, you know the drill. Go to jfonnews.com. See you tomorrow. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.